We're back on Buckeye Talk with another draft update here. Ohio State's Shawn Wade's draft weight ends at number 160 in the fifth round to the Baltimore Ravens. This is a guy that a year ago at this time, we were talking about him as, next year's draft, he'll be what, first round pick, second round pick, something high in this draft. We thought it was a big deal that he was coming back to Ohio State, and it was because they needed him last season. But he obviously did not have the season he wanted, moving from his slot cornerback role where he had thrived out to the outside, where he struggled pretty much consistently throughout the year. And I think maybe that's where to start this discussion is, we talk all the time about like cautionary tales, like guys who regret coming back to college. And this is a tough case because I think he proved this year that he was not an outside cornerback, but he probably also proved that he wasn't ready to go to the NFL last year. You wonder, he would have got maybe drafted higher last year, or maybe drafted higher if he'd opted out. I don't know if it necessarily set him up to have long-term success in the NFL, though.
Sometimes when you try to prove what you are, you prove what you're not. And that's a tough reality to face. And there is a difference between draft stock and where you go and preparing yourself to succeed once you get there. So, we try to learn these lessons and apply them to different guys. But again, I hope everybody's watching all these videos on our YouTube channel. Tommy Togiai, could Tommy Togiai have come back? Maybe he would have gone higher. Maybe he would have gone lower. Maybe he would have gotten nitpicked. Maybe he would have proved. Shawn Wade did come back. Now, I do think the difference with Shawn Wade is there was a position switch. A lot of time guys come back just to sort of put more film of the same thing out there. And it's not always a good thing. He thought when you're a slot corner, I think you limit your upside in terms of draft stock. So he came back for draft stock to play outside, and then he didn't play as well as expected. And so he didn't go as high as expected. So I do think there's a specificity to Shawn Wade's decision that it probably still was the smart thing to do. He just didn't have the season. He thought the pandemic had something to do with that. He also owns some of that, right? I mean, it's your level of play. But there's no guarantee. Coming back, I hope the people listening to this realize that, Ohio State fans realize that. Lots of times fans are like, he should come back. Coming back, more of you in college is not always a guarantee that more is good. So I think this is to some degree an example of that.
Yeah, I think he almost would have been better to just leave it up to assumption, right? Because the assumption was, he's a preseason All-American. He's going to play at that level as a guy who was a number 2 cornerback in the country behind the number 1 corner was Jeff Okudah, who ended up being the 3rd pick in the NFL draft the year before that. So the assumption was, he's going to be somewhere in that stratosphere, or at least Damon Arnett level, which was still good enough to be a first-round pick, whether we agree with it or not. All 5 of the 5 stars from the 2017 class have now been drafted. Baron Browning and going yesterday, and Shawn Wade going today, and then obviously Jeff Okudah and Chase Young being last year, and Wyatt Davis going yesterday as well. But you can't compare it to Wyatt Davis because that would have been him just putting more of the same thing on film, and it hurt him. With Shawn Wade, because it was a position switch, it was probably better to just leave it up to assumption that he's going to be able to do this. Look how great he was in this role.
But again, there's a difference between getting drafted and having a career in the NFL. Those two things are linked, but they can sometimes be mutually exclusive. And he's going to a program now, or a franchise now, that gets good value, I think. And they've gotten good value out of Ohio State players recently. They got J.K. Dobbins in the 2nd round last year. He looks like he's going to be the real deal in the NFL. They got Malik Harrison in the 3rd or 4th round. I thought that was 3rd round. So I thought that was great value that they got last year. This is one of the better franchises in the NFL, and they do smart things like this, especially I think on defense. I mean, they've put together good defenses for a long time, and he's joining a pretty good secondary. I think he still has a chance to have a long NFL career. He doesn't have a chance to have a career as an outside cornerback, a number 1 cornerback. That was what he shot for. He didn't get there. That doesn't mean he can't come and be some kind of a hybrid defensive back, a slot corner, safety, the kind of things he was at Ohio State when we thought he was one of the better defensive backs in the country.
12 years ago, Malcolm Jenkins was a really good cornerback at Ohio State who got drafted in the 1st round and got immediately moved to safety and has been in the NFL for more than a decade and has 2 Super Bowl rings. So I do think it's hard. Corner is such a premium position that it's like everybody wants to be an outside corner. Everybody wants to look at everybody as an outside corner, but it takes a special set of skills. So I do think Shawn Wade, what he did in the slot, play some safety, roam a little bit. I think he's a good football player who had a rough year. So I'm going to continue to be a jerk to you about this, Nathan. You texted again. Shawn Wade, he goes 160. You predicted him to go at 106, and you text and say, I'm not shocked at where he went. So, when are you surprised by anything? When do you say, you know what, that didn't go as I expected? Because you know who's not surprised? Me. I picked him to go in the 5th round. He went in the 5th round. Steven, huge whiff on this. Yeah, 87 at Shawn Wade. Now, I have my own whiffs on other guys, but you guys both overrated Shawn Wade. I thought he couldn't hide from the film this year. And then if he's making a position switch, well, now you're taking like a safety. How much has he played there? Why would you do that before the 5th round? I'm not surprised by this. But Nathan, you did think he'd go first pick in the 4th round.
I did think that people would see the underlying skills, that what he put on tape in the 2018 and 2019 seasons. I thought that those would push through. So I was definitely wrong about that. I guess just saying I'm not shocked that he fell was realizing that I was probably going to be higher on him than some people were when I was picking him to go in the 4th round. But I think you're reading too much into the difference between shocked and like.
No, but every text
I understand why he fell to 160 is what I'm saying.
I was totally wrong on this prediction, but I'm not shocked by it. It's like, well, this is like the anything could happen thing. It's like, of course anything could happen. At some point, you have to be shocked. I'll say I was shocked that Baron Browning lasted as long as he did. I had Baron Browning going 59 and he went 105. I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked. Just be shocked every now and then.
Well, we were all totally wrong about Shawn Wade being a 1st or 2nd round cornerback a year ago or in October when we were still talking about him that way. And he was not. He goes in the 5th round today. But as we've all just said, I think that there's still a lot of upside there for him. And we were talking about this yesterday in relation to Baron Browning and Pete Werner about how sometimes your draft status can then sometimes color their perception of you as you're getting your career started. And now Shawn Wade is coming in as a 5th round pick, and the expectations are a little bit lower now. I think he's at a tough place. I mean, he's at a place where there already is a strong defense. They already have good defensive backs in Baltimore. That's going to be the case pretty much anywhere in the NFL. But I think he also comes in with probably a chip on his shoulder and and less expectations. If he'd come in last year, or after having opted out and was a 1st or 2nd round pick with all those expectations and what we know now, I think that would have been a tougher scenario for him.
Now, but I don't want to spin it too far. Listen, if you're a 3rd round pick and you have a bad camp, they're keeping you. They're not going to cut their 3rd round pick. If you're a 5th round pick and you have a bad camp, you might be gone. So it's like, I will plant my flag on the corner of it is better to be picked higher. Mm-hmm. But I also understand what you're saying. I mean, if Shawn Wade can translate this into motivation in some way, and if he felt pressure last year to live up to the legacy of number 1 corners at Ohio State, and he felt he had to be the next Jeff Okudah or Marshawn Lattimore, and he couldn't be that, I do think from a mental standpoint, Shawn Wade should have a burden lifted. But on the other hand, man, you better do something because they don't know 5th round picks anything.
Which is why I'm obviously shocked. I had him going in the 80s and he went almost 100 picks later than that. I just thought there was a middle ground because most teams just looked at him and thought he's not going to be an outside corner anyway. So let's get him in this position and have him play this specific role for us and not even think about the corner aspect of it. Let's just throw out the 2020 film because that doesn't matter to us. He's never going to be in that position with us, which is why I am shocked he dropped this low because that was my thinking, that some team was just going to think, throw out the 2020 film. It doesn't matter. The 2019 film is what we wanted for.
Those non-conventional secondary roles, the nickelback, the slot corner, those hybrid safety, those things are growing in importance in the NFL. I think that the things I've read, just the recognition of NFL personnel about how important those positions are. I've seen people lobbying for there to be like a nickelback position for the Pro Bowl, things like that. Like those positions are growing in importance and the way people recognize them. So I think that's another opportunity here for Shawn Wade, that he's coming in at a time where if you can carve that niche, again, you're not a starting outside cornerback, but you can still prove yourself to have great value for a team. So we'll keep coming with more of these. Every time an Ohio State player comes off the board, still a couple guys out there that we think could get picked, maybe probably will get picked. And you're listening to Buckeye Talk.